Hello and welcome back. This is Christopher Aaron. It is June 5th, 2020. This is a special weekend update where we will look extensively at the silver price. Silver has had quite a movement here over the last number of weeks, and we want to look at the probabilities. Is this the start of the bigger move higher, or is this just another one of those fake outs? So we will look at all that and more in this update. I want to encourage you to hit the big red subscribe button before we go any further, and also hit the little red bell icon that will give you notifications when these free videos are published so you don't miss anything. So as we look at the silver price, of course, we have to be aware investors of what is happening across all markets. And the reason for this is, for example, we often see these correlations. And so when we look at silver, since the peak back in February, this was that $18.60 peak, and this was the all-time high for stocks. We're looking at the S&P 500 here. Notice the correlation between silver and stocks. So on the way down, when stocks had the crash due to the coronavirus, very similar percentage crash that we saw here in silver. And on the way higher, we are also seeing quite a correlation where silver started to try to distance itself here from stocks. Now silver is coming back and stocks are surging. Net sum, look at the end result, right, over these last 3.5 months. Incredibly strong correlation. And we could say that we know from a fundamental basis that silver is not equivalent to the industrial stock market. And on a fundamental level, that would be true. But the point of this channel, the point of the work that we do here, is to show you what actually is happening, which is that the market, the sum of the participants, are treating silver as an industrial commodity at this point. And for that matter, the industrial commodities are moving with a high degree of correlation to what? Industrial stocks. And the point of following this kind of work is so that we can notice, when does this start to change? We can theorize that this will change in the future, but until we actually begin to see it change, that's all a theory. So let's move on and look at what is actually happening here in the silver price itself. And by the way, why is that correlation so important? It's because if you have not had a chance to watch the last video that we released 2 weeks ago, make sure to go back and watch that one, because you will see the signals that we are looking at here that show us that something significant is brewing in the world economy. Even though the stock market has recovered, there are some signals that are once-in-a-generation signals that show us that there should be significantly more trouble ahead for the industrial economy. And so one has to ask themselves, might silver also get pulled down if stocks get pulled down again in the future? Make sure to go back and watch that last video. Now, we are looking at the long-term chart here, silver from 2001 through the present, and we have some room for projections here into the future, into the later part of this decade. I've already drawn in some of the important support and resistance levels. You can see according to the key. But the one that I wanted to focus on in this video is actually the long-term trend here that had developed from the 2003 lows. And I want to show you how the silver market is changing. So understand, with this type of analysis, we are never saying that we have a crystal ball with which to predict 100% of future movements. What we're saying is that we have a roadmap and that we're observing the visible support and resistance, the visible trend changes as they occur, because trends tend to be respected for quite some time, especially these long-term trends. So pay attention to the magenta line here and notice the number of times that this rising trend, where we had buyers stepping in at higher and higher levels. Notice the number of times that this happened over the course of what? Almost 20 years, right? A little false breakdown there in the flash crash of 2017. And the trend is a general region of rising prices. It doesn't mean that every time the data point has to perfectly match the trend as we saw here in 2008. Sometimes we have a general trend of rising prices, but fairly well respected here over the course of 2 decades, right? Where people were coming in at higher and higher prices until what? In the breakdown in 2018, notice how this trend was clearly not respected on the way down. Buyers failed to show up here in 2018. Now, what happened in 2019 is that the former trend acted as resistance, which is what we would expect to see after a trend is broken. However, then again in 2019, we did see this trend disrespected once again, respected as support on the way down, but then broken again to the lower side and now broken once again to the upper side. So we had basically a 2-decade trend that has now been disrespected on 4 separate occasions here over the course of the last 2.5 years. And we have to incorporate this change in behavior into our projection models. We cannot ignore the fact that silver is no longer respecting a 2-decade trend. So we want to remove this line and we want to replace it with something that will allow us to see where the former trend used to exist, but not be as obvious in the analysis here. So under the system we are using, I changed this to a turquoise color, as you can see here, so we can still see the rising trend, but not place quite as much focus on it. Okay, the market is no longer respecting this trend, which I will tell you at this point is neither a good thing or a bad thing. It is what it is, because there are other trends that the market is respecting. And let's take a look. When we notice some of the lows here that were coming into 2017, 2018, and this recent low into 2020, we can see there's a zone of lows that are declining slightly for the market. And what else? A zone of highs that are declining slightly for the silver market. So at this point, we have a market that has broken its long-term rising trend. We can see this is not resulting in an outright collapse in silver. I've made this point a number of times in previous videos that when you have a market that had already fallen by 75%, and then if you break a long-term rising trend, it doesn't mean that the market has to collapse. The collapse has already happened. But what it does mean is that there is another trend that is now developing, and that trend is shown here in the blue. And it is a lower trend. However, it's a very, the steepness of the slope is very gentle on the way down. It is still a declining trend until proven otherwise. And so we have nice hits on the upper side and nice hits in the range of a lower side. This is what has now developed in the silver market. When will we know that this has changed? It is right here. This is the must break level that we are approaching for silver on the upper side. And I want to call this level $18.60 in the spot market. This chart was produced late last night when we were at $17.70, just below that on spot. We are a little bit lower than that today, but either way, the must break level is $18.60 here. It is this upper declining blue trend line. And you will see, for example, look at the significance of the surge that was seen after this last declining trend broke here from 2013 through 2015. Notice right where my mouse is that after we broke this trend, there was an initial little surge, come back to retest that trend, and then notice the surge into 2016, right? Surge from $14 up to $21. So now we have a less steep downtrend compared to this downtrend that has formed, and we are waiting to see when do we get the break of this less steep downtrend. Because when we get that break, this is going to be an excellent technical model. It's going to show us what is going to happen is we will see a first initial spike. This is very textbook technical action that I believe we will see after this downtrend is broken. We will see an initial spike here in silver, likely to match the 2016 high. We will then see a back off to come back and retest this broken blue trend when this happens. then we will see the beginning of the much more significant advance in silver into the low to mid 20s, backing off once again at this black resistance level at 26, and then the continuation of the advance into the middle and later part of the next decade. And I predict that once we see this type of price behavior, a breaking of this trend here, the surge and then the successful retest, I predict that the move that is developing into the middle part of this decade is going to be the move where we see silver break that $50 an ounce. So this is very important for us to monitor. When does this level break here, $18.60 for silver? When does this actually happen on a dual weekly closing basis? None of these false breakouts that we've seen here. Now, if we fail to break this resistance zone, unfortunately, silver will be rolling over and declining back toward recent lows, and it will spend some time grinding in this $10 to $11 to $12 to $13 range before we can begin to look at the potential for this downtrend to break within the next couple of years. This is what will be happening if we fail to exceed $18.60. And we have some people who often give a criticism. They say, oh, well, you're saying then anything can happen. No, I am not saying that. I am not saying that silver is going to $50 an ounce this year. I am also not saying that silver is going to collapse back down to $5 an ounce this year. I am saying that depending on how the break or lack thereof happens here at $18.60, we will see either an initial surge followed by a retracement, followed by continuation, or we will see silver back off to the recent lows here around $11 per ounce in the spot market. Okay, very distinct if-then statements, just like in computer programming or anything else where one set of actions depends on what happens at a trigger point. Extremely important price action here to observe. And my prediction is that we will know the outcome for this here over the next 3 months. This should be a summertime phenomenon. If we fail to see this breakout by Labor Day, by the changing of the seasons into the fall, I predict that it won't be happening this year. And so I just want to remind you that strong correlation between stocks and silver, because we looked at these signals last week. This is a screenshot from the video last week in which we were talking about the breakout in the gold to silver ratio being a signal of a major depression brewing, and that we've just seen that same signal. And by the way, the signal has not been negated yet, even though that ratio has come back down into that 95 to 100 region. That is not a negation of the breakout. You would need to see a decline below where the surge began here, which was right at the upper 80 and lower 90 region. There is some variability. Breakouts can come back into the zone of the breakout and then continue. And that is what appears still to be setting up for the gold to silver ratio at this time. So if you understand the importance here of the correlation between 1929 and the present, then you have to say, is this going to be the time that silver breaks out? Or if stocks are setting up for another major decline, could that drag silver lower with it? These are the types of things that we study. If you're saying, I wish I received this kind of analysis every single week or more analysis, this is what comes in our premium service, including this Monday, a 1-hour update in video format just like this. If you like these videos, I strongly encourage you to check this out. We cover not only silver, we cover gold, we cover the US dollar, we cover the US stock market and the gold and silver mining sector, all sent to your inbox with premium updates such as this. If you would like to work with me one-on-one, please know that I take no fees or no funds from any of the gold or silver funds, any of the gold miners that we're talking about here. I do voice and email consultations with individuals if you would like some assistance in plotting out a strategy. I can't tell you what to do. I can tell you what I would do in your situation from an independent standpoint. If you're new to the precious metals, or if you've been involved in this for many years and you're looking to tweak your strategy, know that I'm here to help you. We are seeing that strong correlation between silver and the stock market. There's no one here who can deny that correlation. It's been going on for the last 3.5 months. And I really feel like this is the time to ask yourself the hard question. If we get another decline in the stock market later this year or next year, what evidence do we have for how silver will perform? I want to thank those people who are supporting this channel on Patreon. It really means a lot to me, guys. Thank you for that. And know that you can send me requests for future videos, and I will place your recommendations at the forefront of future video creation schedule. And once again, make sure to hit the red subscribe button and the little bell to get notified. Super important time here. Silver is closing in on that $18 mark. It tried to poke its head above that, but you have seen the levels in this video where silver needs to break. It needs to break that level, and then we get a whole new trajectory. Until that time, we have to place the cards as we actually see them. Thank you, and I will see you soon. Stay well, stay healthy, and stay strong.